I'm a hydrangea nut, so when we were house hunting, I had my pH meter with me. Bugger the interiors, I wasn't interested. I wanted how much land there was it level enough for an old fogey like me to manage a wheelbarrow, and what was the pH? I've always felt to be a garden creator rather than a curator. I've twice turned down the opportunity to be a National Trust resident, and I didn't want to look after somebody else's gardens. I wanted to make my own. That's where the buzz comes from, and it activates the shopping gene beautifully as well.
Before we started kind of recording in earnest today, you said that there's a kind of specific reason behind your pursuit of autumn colour, aside from obviously its glory.
Well, it's I don't know. Is it to do with the end of the year? The days are getting shorter, but the garden's getting brighter and brighter. I'm in the autumn of my life, so I'm sharing. I hope the plant's natural autumn thing, but I hope not to lose all my leaves just yet. I lost my hair, but I don't want to lose the rest of it. It's all dropping off too quickly at this age.
For anyone who's interested in what's going on at East Ruston Old Vicarage at the moment in terms of autumn glory, then you'll have to go and check out not only our October but our November at East Ruston Old Vicarage Talking Dirty specials, because 32 acres, your arboretum, there's always plenty to talk about. Fingers crossed we'll keep this going through December, January, February and get plenty of autumn and winter.
And the great thing about autumn, the other great thing about autumn is, of course, shorter days mean longer evenings, which means more time for reading.
Yes. And I mean, we haven't talked about Hortus yet. This keeps happening. We come on to talk about maybe something in particular, a bit like when we talked to Richard about his Eucomis National Collection and got totally derailed by roscoias and abutilons and various other plants before we even touched on pineapple lilies. But Hortus, the reason so many people know you so well, David, when did it's been going for so many episodes now? 100 and how many now?
Well, just put 148 to bed. So next summer's issue will be the 150th. And I started it in 1987 when I'd been made redundant from a job and set myself up as an energetic young jobbing gardener. I thought, well, at this time, I was in my mid-30s, I suppose, early 30s, and I thought I'm just going to if I can just earn enough money to get by, but doing something I really love. My background was in Fleet Street, so I'd said goodbye to all that. I was living in the country, and I thought, right, I'm going to make a garden, and I'm going to work in other people's gardens as well. And within just a couple of, I don't know, I think I've got printer's ink in my veins and not blood from those Fleet Street years. And I thought, where is all the really good garden reading these days? This was in the mid-80s. Magazines were giving more and more space to pictures, to photographs, beautiful, wonderful things, but less and less text. And I had always been intrigued by a little monthly called My Garden, which started in the 1930s, went right through the war and lasted, I think, until about 1954 or 55. It coped with those post-war paper shortages and didn't miss an issue. It was monthly, not quarterly. And it was just full of good garden writing, articles of between, 1,000 and 2,000, 2,500 words, little wood engravings perhaps, or little black and white drawings. And you can still get them in bundles, usually in secondhand bookshops or charity shops. And they're marvelous. And I thought, there's nothing like that. Nobody's made a home now in the 1980s for good garden writing of length, of durability. So I sat down and wrote a number of letters, dear Mrs. Hobhouse, dear Mrs. Veery, dear Sir Roy, and all that. And I was absolutely overwhelmed by the response by people who wanted to say, yeah, I'd love to do it, but, Country Life or whatever magazine, they only give me 800 words now or something. And I got so much more to say. Gardens Illustrated wasn't even born then. So I predate Gardens Illustrated, which is wonderfully successful and does what it does beautifully. And I'd like to think that what I do is equally appreciated by giving a home for the long read, if you like. People who really want to sit down, enjoy good typography and good writing.
Yeah.
I just say something else while we're on the subject. Can we just say something else about Hortus? And it is this. That is the size of Hortus.
Yes.
It is eminently portable. It's a kind of thing that you can take with you without taking up too much space or anything. So if you're on a journey somewhere on the train or something like that, and you just want, and each article is, it's a dippable periodical. I think you dip into it and dip out of it. I mean, it's this and that, it's bits and bobs. It's absolutely fascinating. I'm just reading about, well, I'm reading the thing In Praise of Older Plants, Cherished Familiars Not Forgotten. And I often come back to that in my gardening itself. And quite often people, gardeners, will say mistakenly, oh, that's a common old thing. But do you ask yourself why it may be a common old thing?
Yes.
It's been aware.
I was glad to...
like you and I, David, it's been around a long time and it's bloody good value.
Well, it gives me still great pleasure, and I'm asked occasionally, can we have it in digital format or something? And I say no. I care about the production values, the typography. You'll see on the very last page, Alan, that note at the bottom about the typography. We use a typeface called Van Dyke, which is a monotypeface, which is based on the Dutch gardening books of the 17th century.
I love that.
I've done a modern version of it.
That one little remark has just shown the amount that you care about your magazine. I think it's absolutely marvelous. And also, it's a quarterly magazine. I'm thinking of people now perhaps wanting to give Christmas presents. I mean, I know Thordis has already hinted, and I knew she was going to do that, of course.
That does reveal that I don't have a subscription. I did, but when I was about to pop, I thought I'm never going to have the time, because the way I read Hortus is I can't take it on a train. So mine is sort of the other half's out of the house. The house is utterly silent. And hopefully a sunny morning, I want to be sitting on my sofa in the morning when the sun is streaming through with a cup of coffee and an article in Hortus that I've saved, that I can listen, like I can kind of fully paint all the pictures without anything intruding on my little magical world of those 1,500 words or whatever it might be. And I thought the likelihood that I'd be able to have that moment with the little one around was unlikely.
Well, that's something I shall think of when I'm putting the next issue together. That's nice to know. Feedback is important, isn't it? And
yes, it is.
The only downside being that it's like a fantastic box of chocolates. When you get bought an extra special box of chocolates and you discover that this is how I operate, you discover the flavors you really love, I try and save them. And the next thing I know, either he's eaten them or they've been chucked out because he thinks I'm not eating them, or and so sometimes I can save things too much, and I swear there are articles that I've probably been saving that I've never actually got around to reading because I'm waiting for that perfect moment to read them. So I'm sure there's an adage for life in there.
Well, I've done one anthology called Hortus Revisited. Well, there we go.
Well, I was going to say, because if Alan was going to talk about Christmas presents, of course, if somebody has already got the Hortus subscription, then this book is wonderful in terms of revisiting the articles you might have missed or reminding you of ones you've forgotten from previous years.
Yes.
I love that.
It's kind of you to say those things, and it's a soul. Simon and I do it together with the help of a very good friend who handles all the business side, the subscriptions. I mean, the mailing problems these days are just horrendous, and I worry slightly because it won't be long before the cost of sending the thing out is going to be more than the cost of producing it. It's getting ridiculous. And we have lost a lot of European subscribers because of Brexit. And I'm not going to introduce anything more political to this talk than that, except to say that in some countries, some EU countries, in Austria, for example, now, they have to pay VAT on receiving Hortus. They have to pay 22 euros per issue to receive it. That's a handling charge and their own country's VAT. Well, they cancel their subscription, don't they? but I refuse to do the digital version yet. So maybe digital's down. We may all be going digital one day. Maybe I should do a companion, I won't say competing podcast, by some readings from Hortus. That might be a nice little thing to do.
Oh, yes. We don't care. I mean, competitor, companion, we don't mind as long as there's just more gardening out there. That's what we're interested in.
Wonderful.
I know quite a few gardeners, David, that actually have well-known gardening authors on their audio thing on their telephone, so they're able to pop their earphones in and they listen while they're gardening, which I think is rather lovely.
Fantastic. Yeah. So that's another avenue to be planted.
And as a plantaholic, it must be a joy for you when you are reading through the articles that come in. And I don't know whether you commission or whether they just arrive on your desk or you just get deluged from people who want to write for Hortus. But when
I reckon to commission 75% of it, so it reflects my interests, which are wide.
Yes.
You might say eclectic, because there are some very odd things turn up in Hortus. It simply would never find a home elsewhere. Digging with the Duchess, it must be the only gardening spoof published anywhere in the world. And it's outrageously funny, and it has its devotees, rather like the Archers.
Yeah.
People love to follow this ridiculous Duchess, smoking her 40 caps and full strength a day, and no stranger to the gin and the gardening gloves. So she alone, I know, sells Hortus to a certain group of readers.
And when you get these various articles, obviously there's travel writing in there, there's history, there's pieces on colour, all kinds of wonderful eclectic things. It must inform your garden, your gardening decisions, introducing you to plants, reminding you of plants, helping you to make a decision on some combination or some corner of the garden.
There must be some, yes, it must rub off, obviously, and I hope it rubs off on the readers too.
It certainly does.
It does, yes.
And I think it helps us sometimes to look again. I mean, Alan says this about taking photos of his garden, to look again at plants you're growing or combinations you've got, or to, I don't know, even go out and appreciate the glory of the bright, crisp morning. Having read about one in Hortus, you can kind of go out and live it. I don't know. It does feed into your day to day somehow.
Yeah, I think most gardeners too do fall into the same two categories that Simon and I largely represent, design or plants. There are genius gardeners who have both at all, but I can remember when I used to do a lot of talks to gardening clubs. I don't do so much of that these days, but I very often used to say, particularly to an entirely female audience, I used to often begin by saying, that your garden is your knicker drawer. You just arrange it as you want it. You don't need a garden designer that's going to charge you sort of thousands of guineas to come and tell you what to plant. Just do what you want to do and enjoy it.
It's going to make me think very differently. When I see a very organised garden from now on, I'm going to think very differently of that person's knicker drawer. All like rolled up and colour coordinated or something.
Exactly.
Matching sets. Now, we've sort of touched on FLOMO because I asked you about this sort of thing you wanted to get hold of. But FLOMO, that fear of missing out you get about a flower or a plant, even with many acres. I mean, Alan, certainly with 32 acres, always deluged with FLOMO. Do you find yourself, even having gardened all these years, with quite a long list of plants that you would like to get hold of or you haven't grown before, you want to try?
Yes, and there's no shortage of new varieties coming along, and I'd love to try. I mean, I do spend most of my money on woody plants, shrubs, trees, but I'm now making. Under the trees, I want the shrubs. Under the shrubs, I want the perennials. Under the perennials, I want the bulbs. The many layers of gardening, and the choice is phenomenal, and thank heavens for mail order, because living where I do, we've got one very good nursery up in the hills above Carmarthen called Farmyard Nurseries, which I use a lot. And
very good. So do I, David.
Yeah,
Yes, you
very,
have.
very good.
Yes, I do. I use them an awful lot. I mean, they're just as a nursery. I think it's probably a family-run nursery, is it? I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's a guy
But
called
they are
Richard.
such obliging people to deal with. I have to say, give them 10 out
Wonderful.
of 10 for that.
Well, it's a second home for me, and I go up there and we just put the kettle on and we wander through, all the new acquisitions, and
Yeah, yeah.
and I think every time
Lovely.
I go, I think, God, why didn't I bring a bigger car? I must have a van.
A bus.
Yeah, so there are always lovely things. What the there's I'm intrigued by, but I could never seem to find in nurseries Lindera. You must grow Lindera, Alan, I'm
Lindera.
sure.
Jimmy Blake, a big fan of Lindera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a large genus, but they have wonderful autumn color. Tend to be more yellow and pale orange rather than the deep reds. But you need those colors. With my Japanese maples, 30 or so only, I plant the reds next to the oranges, intermingle with the yellows. And we're talking about the autumn colors now. And it's that contrast. And if you just wanted to garden with Japanese maples, underplanted, say, with Erythroniums and Iris sibirica, gosh, that's plenty, isn't it? I mean, that could keep a man happy for many years, I think.
I think Linda, you'll get from Bluebell Nurseries, actually.
Good. I've been there. That's up in Derbyshire, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Ashby de la Zouche, I seem to think.
Yes, yes, you're right.
Yeah. But most nurseries now will send you things, won't they? So that's good.
Yeah, more and more of them. I definitely have got Lindera triloba on my wish list, but the garden's taken a bit of a hit over the last year. So the less said about that, the better.
And I'm after a Parrotia called Bella. I can't seem to find that at the moment. So
you will.
You have it, Alan? I bet you have.
No, I don't have it, but I just said you will.
I'm interested in any Parrotia. What is Bella like in particular?
It's just its autumn color begins earlier, probably in August, and will stay on till Christmas. And goes
a long season
all the time between oranges and purples and golds, and it just sounds wonderful. I haven't seen it. I'm only going by somebody else's words.
Well, sometimes you just need to grow it, don't you?
Yeah. Exactly.
I've been FLOMOing over all kinds of things. To go back to your Acers, you posted a photo of, I think it was a new acquisition, Acer palmatum Wild Goose.
Yes.
Which looked to have wonderful scarlet little.
Terrific. Yeah.
Terrific colour. Terrific.
It's grown well, and actually I planted them in. When did I plant them? In end of March, beginning of April this year. So they went straight into that prolonged drought and that long period of scorching days for 2 months. 60 days of. I had umbrellas over them. I went down to the pound shop and bought umbrellas. I bought 15 umbrellas, and I moved them round. This is what an old man does in his afternoons, Alan. I move the umbrellas round as the sun moves and put them over these small 3 foot, 2 foot 6 young Japanese maples, because the paler leaved ones, the shirasawanums and those Moonrise and Moonbeam and those varieties, they scorch very quickly. And of course, they hadn't got their roots in. They hadn't found their own drinking hole yet. So I was standing at the end of a hose pipe with a hose pipe in one hand and an umbrella in the other. I thought, this is quite dotty, but they're my babies. You do it, don't you? You do it.
Yeah.
That is wonderful. I will find myself doing that at some point in the future, I'm sure. Also, you talked about your Cornus kousas earlier. Cornus kousa, Schmetterling and Heart Throb. Slightly different colorings. Both looked like they brought fabulous flamey colors.
Heart Throb is extraordinary. I make no apologies for the name because I didn't name it, but it is, the way a Cornus leaf has this sort of curl to it.
Yes.
And it does look heart-shaped now as the leaves are maturing, about to fall off. But the color is fantastic. So I don't know whether it's the blood from the heart that it's named for, or the shape of the leaf, but it's a damn good tree. And it's got 2 flowers on it now, bless it. 2 pink flowers, rather like the Floridas, the Cherokee Brave and those pinky dogwoods. So it's another confused plant, but that's
not for this year anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Talking of pink vein flowers, I mean, whether I'll ever live in a garden where it would be happy, but the autumn colour on your Enkianthus campanulatus. So, I mean, obviously in spring, those lovely little bells, sort of ready pinky veining into the creamy bells, and wonderful fiery fall colours.
It's another bomb-proof plant too, and I've grown that on non-acid soil. It works just as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I've seen them about 10, 12 feet tall, but they still have a smallish footprint. So they don't take up a lot of room. So you can have 3 where you might only have 1. And the colors vary from plant to plant slightly, as the Persian spire Parrotia does. I've got one that's full of yellow leaves at the moment, and the other one planted 10 feet away is a most wonderful claret color. Seed raised, I suppose, and has these tiny differences, which is all part of the joy and surprise, isn't it, of plants?
Yes, it is.
And I must add in, it's completely different. We've mostly dealt with woodier material on this podcast, but I did see a charming little woodlander on your Instagram, which I had never ever heard of. And I'm going to say it wrong, but Peltoboykinia, something like that.
Well, I found that at a plant sale this summer, and do you know Kirengeshoma?
Yes,
it's a sort of miniature version of that. I don't think it'll probably grow to about 15 inches. It flowered in August, so just before Kirengeshoma. That tends to be more September, and it's the most lovely sort of buttery yellow flowers over these large palmate leaves, and just looks absolutely at home with Japanese maples as an underplanting. It just has a sort of Japanese look about it for some reason.
Fringing to the petals, like a little sort of feathering, like someone's got some pinking shears on it. Somebody
said when I posted on Instagram, they said, "Oh, it's got jazz hands." So it does look as if it's had the pinking shears.
It comes from Japan and China. I'm cheating now. I'm looking at Wikipedia. And it's a member of the saxifrage family. And it's one of those plants that you look at it and it doesn't shout at you, but it draws your attention. It's a very discreet.
Yes.
I would say a very discreet plant. Lovely.
A good woodlander. I think it'll take a bit more sun than Kirengeshoma might. I'm told it would by the nurseryman who sold it to me. But again, it's new here, so new plants are just very exciting, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And of course, the other great love, apart from the Japanese maples and the dogwoods, are Iris sibirica. I'm building a collection of those, and asters by any name. Asters.
Really? How interesting.
Those violet colours, those rosy colours, mauve colours, violet colours, with autumn woody plant colours are just fantastic.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Symphyotrichum now, David, lots of them.
I know. That's why I say an aster by any name. Oh, those botanists.
Well, the problem is the botanist, what they're doing is informative, and it's right, it's correct.
Yes.
But it's very difficult for gardeners to perhaps, not necessarily you and I, because we're dealing with it all the time. Talking about nomenclature. Yes. But it's for the general public. It's, to go from a 2-syllable word like aster to symphyotrichum, a 5-syllable word. It's pretty impossible.
Yeah, I agree.
When the name first changed, Alan and I were working together on the radio, and
yes,
whenever I see Symphyotrichum written down, whenever I say it, I hear Alan in my head saying, and the way I remember it, Symphyotrichum. So Alan, inextricably linked to asters forevermore.
Exactly. Yeah, you need things like that as sort of little aid memoir, I think.
Yeah.
anyone who is a big Aster fan, we did a lovely Talking Dirty special with Picton Garden. So many Asters and Symphia trichums delved into there. So if you're looking for the best ones or the most interesting ones or ones with stories, then that was an interesting episode.
Well, the garden there, the foothills and the Malvern hills, are just so beautiful. And he has liquid ambers and Japanese maples all sort of stitched in among them. It's terrific. Probably not too late now. I don't know when is this podcast going out, but certainly in September and October. And this year, November. It's a late season, isn't it, Alan?
It is a late season. And also, the other thing about the Picton Garden, I think, is that they have widened their interest in plants. I mean, they have an awful lot of wonderful snowdrop collection as well.
Yes, they do.
Succulents.
Yes.
Everything.
Yeah.
Before we have to bring this to a close, Alan, any FLOMO that you would like to draw our attention to? Anything that's caught your attention this podcast?
No, it hasn't caught my attention today, but it's just the one which I've got two bits of south-facing wall, and it was back to woody material again, because I want to try growing. They're not tall walls; they're probably no taller than about 12 feet, but I want to try growing a Magnolia grandiflora against them, because I saw this done at a garden in Suffolk, and they had two L-shaped flint walls, probably no more than about 6 foot high, I suppose, and a seat enclosed with this L-shaped thing. And between the seat and the wall was Magnolia grandiflora, but it was pruned within an inch of its life. Poor thing, I thought when I looked at it. And then I looked at it again, and I went away and I came back and looked at it again, and I suddenly thought, yes, but the flowers are there. And the flowers are,
that's interesting.
You can actually see them, you can appreciate, you can get close to them. Whereby Magnolia grandiflora, I got one I grew from a cutting. We planted originally on the front of the house, and I ripped it out one morning after being kept awake all night with it rattling on the window. But I took a cutting, and that cutting grew, and it's now a tree, and it's in the north garden here. And I mean, it's lovely. I can see the flowers from my bedroom window, but of course you can't see them very much from ground level. Well, you can just about, but you can't do what you want to do. I want to bury my nose in it.
There's quite a few of them around here in South Wales. There's quite a few that are just open ground trees.
Yes.
You expect the old advice was to plant them against the wall, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Warmth and protection.
The one I want to acquire is, I think there's an old French variety which is called a double. And it's not really double. It's got like a secondary row of petals behind those big parchmenty like petals, if you like, and I just thought I'd like to get that, and I think it's called, is it Nantais? I think everyone says that. And I think I may have sourced one from Langthorne's Plantery, who are down in Essex.
Good.
Fingers crossed.
But it does mean that I've now got a surplus of two Magnolia grandifloras, because I'd already asked Richard to get me a couple. But anyway,
what a problem to have.
You see, this is something else that I'm sure, David, you do this as well. You think of the plant that you would like, be it a Cornus or be it rhododendron or be it a hydrangea, and then you suddenly think, but there's a better one than that.
Yes, of course.
I've read about this and I need to know about that.
And then you're in danger of becoming a collector. And then you get nerdy.
Well, I think we both are, actually.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
I think everybody attached to this podcast, listening, watching, I think we all put ourselves a little bit in danger of that, if not well stuck into that, dragged down into the world
and
of obsession.
You find soulmates very easy. You find other hydrangea nuts, and you find Japanese maple nuts and aster nuts, and we just find each other somehow.
Yeah, there's a mutual interest, isn't it? Because the old lady who's died now, but she had the most wonderful collection of alpine bulbs, and she used to invite me to her garden snowdrop time and throughout the year and all the rest of it. And it's always, well, bring a trowel and take a bit of that, Yeah, and I said to her one day, Anne, how on earth did you get such a marvelous collection? And she just looked at me and she said, well, it's not what you know, is it?
Well, they say if you want to keep a plant, give it away.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've certainly had a number of very interesting plants restored to me. I've got some wonderful Sternbergias that Tony Venison gave me. You know Tony Venison, who former gardens editor of Country Life, great friend of Cedric Morris.
Yeah.
These are the bulbs that Cedric gave to Tony Venison, that Tony Venison gave to me, that Cedric Morris dug up in the 1950s in Andalusia. Can't do it now, it'd be frowned upon, but it wasn't then. I've got a lovely big pot of those. When I was having, back in those hospital days of a few years ago, through neglect, they got lost. But I'd already given some to friends in Cambridgeshire, and they were restored to me again last year. So,
oh, wonderful!
That same bloodline goes on, and they're right here. Cedric's Sternbergias from Andalusia. Wonderful, isn't it? And I'll return them to Benton End when they've bulked up. Cedric's.
I saw somebody say, isn't it funny that there is so much garden writing? Gardening is this visual thing, and yet there's so much garden writing, so much garden radio, all these mediums where you wouldn't expect such a visual medium to thrive. But I think it is because it's all about stories. And it's, I don't know. And I suppose for those of us who know the plants, you also get a great visual of it. But there's so much about story and
the backstories, the provenance, the plant hunters, the modern plant hunters. I've got a piece in the winter issue by a young man from the Edinburgh Botanic Garden who's plant hunting now in his early 20s. He's plant hunting in Vietnam right now. Terrific, isn't it? You know, gardeners are getting younger, Alan. They're getting younger. Which is wonderful.
So pleasing, David.
As a breed, we're not going to die out.
Well, yes. I mean, with the subscribers to Hortus in their 20s and 30s, that can give us all hope, can't it?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you, David. I mean, it's been absolutely wonderful to catch up with you. Fingers crossed you'll come back, maybe show us some of your spring bulbs when the weather gets a little warmer.
Well, I put as much as I can on Instagram without pestering people, and the rest of it's in Hortus. So
I think it'd be lovely to look at Iris sibirica.
Yes.
Because, you know, a collection of those is, I mean, it's a very easy plant to grow.
Very easy, and it bulks up, so you can give it away by the ton.
Yeah,
and there are lots of lovely varieties, different heights, different colours within a certain spectrum. Again, bomb-proof plants, they're just wonderful.
And I think that,
alas, but
perhaps somebody with a small garden, but perhaps somebody with a small garden, it might be nice to have flowering times as well.
Yes.
So you can have early, medium, and late.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I grow a little iris called Iris pumila. Pumila, do you know that? It's only about 6 inches tall, but it looks like a miniature sibirica. Flowers about a month earlier, and then you've got the Dutch iris bulbs that come on about a month after. So you can have 3 months of lovely iris, that kind of easy growing iris, March, April, and May.
Well, I think I know when we're going to get you back then, David.
No, you missed an iris out there, because I'm going to put in a plug for Iris latifolia, which is known as the English iris.
Yes.
It's getting increasingly difficult to find the bulbs of that, but it blooms after the Dutch iris. And it's a lovely, lovely garden plant. I gave that away to somebody. I lost mine. And is an old gentleman. He used to grow it in rows on his allotment because his wife was a flower ranger. So he grew it for her. And he used to harvest the bulbs every year and grade them. And so he was able to bring me some bulbs back in the autumn for replanting for the following year. So I've still got it.
Fantastic. Isn't that lovely? Yeah.
Enduring. Yeah, the joys of gardening. David, I can't wait to see all of these irises next year. But until then, people need to hop onto the Hortus website. It's very easy to order a subscription for yourself or order as a gift. I assume you can get hold of Hortus Revisited still?
That's very endangered now. We've only got a few copies. First come, first serve. But Hortus we can certainly supply.
Yeah, and back catalogue copies as well.
Winter one is in the press now and will be available by the end of the month. So it's another year completed.
Wonderful. Well, until next time, thank you very much. It's been an absolute joy, David. Happy gardening, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah.
Happy gardening.
My step. Thank you. And you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful. I've got a little happy baby in the background. David, that was fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful array of plants.
You make it very easy, the pair of you. So bravo. Did you have any idea of how many listeners you have? I mean, it must vary, but
so it depends a little bit. I think it's approximately, I'd say, because we have audio and video, so the video tends to get sort of, I don't know, 700 to 1200 views. The audio gets sort of 700 to 1200, probably 700 to 1000 listens, and there's very little overlap. I think 1 or 2 people go through listening to it and then watch it, or the other way around, I suppose. But yeah, so I think it's probably 1400.
When will this one go out?
This one, so as I said to Alan halfway through that podcast, I'm going to try and record a note, otherwise we will miss November to do November at East Ruston Old Vicarage, so we're going to do them a little out of order. So that means probably the very end of November, this one, and I may well divide it into 2 so that it goes part 1 on one Wednesday, part 2 on the following Wednesday. I'll try and remember to send you the link of where it's going to go, the video version anyway. The audio one, I suppose I technically could send you a link, but it's sort of in all the various audio podcasty places. But yeah, the video one, they go up on a Wednesday evening, just because that's when we've always put them out. I don't know why, but that's just, just when they go out. It's a handy point in the week to be able to work on it. For some reason, Wednesday night works well. Lovely. So I'll keep you posted, and I will almost certainly be in touch just for a few of the photos I don't have. I have a kind of a good back catalogue of photos now, but not everything by any stretch.
Okay. Well, anything you want, I'll try and supply.
Wonderful stuff. That was what a joy. What a lovely way to spend the morning. Thank you very much.
And the sun is shining, and Man Friday should be out there beavering away now, so it'll be time for his coffee. Okay, Alan, thank you so much for picking us up and doing it.
Not at all. You're very welcome. Thank you for my complimentary coffee.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Have a great day, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. So this is episode 114.
Ah, fantastic. Well, I'm on HORTUS 148, so that's quarterly. So
yes, exactly. You're doing a bit better.
Very soon.
You've got a bit of a longer sort of back catalogue than we have. Right. I'll wait for the cockapoo to get out of the door. Then we can go from the top.
Okay.
Our dog has a terrible habit of barking when she sees the lead. So every time you try to take her anywhere, you get this.
I know all about that. Yeah.
Coughing and woofing. Right. Onwards. And for anyone, by the way, who's interested in what's going on in terms of autumn glory at East Ruston, we did an October at East Ruston Old Vicarage Talking Dirty sort of a couple of episodes back. Next episode, hang on. Got so confused about which episode we're on. Hang on. I think what you don't know, Alan, is next week I want you to record a November at East Ruston episode. So I'm going to put that.
It's in here. I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, right. Here we go. See, I told like we're married. All right. So.